I'm Shay Mose, and you're watching Dante's Boxing
I'm Ramiro, the Filipino Flash, Donaire, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So it is official. The alien, Bernard Hopkins, will be challenging the crusher, Sergey Kovalev, in a unification bout at the light heavyweight division. This is a good look for the sport of boxing, guys. This is a big fight. I can't wait to watch it. One of the main reasons I can't wait to watch it is it's a free televised fight for one, right? And it's the perfect clash of styles. Boxer versus puncher. You have a 50-year-old man that's damn near not even human going up against a very young, prime, strong young lion with power, aggression, and so on and so forth, right? It has the makings to be a great fight. Now, this fight reminds me of a couple of fights when it comes to Bernard Hopkins. The first fight it reminds me of is Beibut Shumenov. And the main reason why I say that is because if you look at this picture right here, it is eerily similar to the picture that Bernard Hopkins took with Beibut Shumenov before they had their fight, when they were basically trying to promote the fight. Just like the Shumenov situation. Shumenov, he had to get past his next opponent so he can make a Bernard Hopkins fight come to fruition. And right after Shumenov knocked out his opponent, Bernard Hopkins was right there to greet him with a big ass smile, already promoting the fight, already ready to go, right? This is exactly what Bernard Hopkins did after Kovalev knocked out Caparello. He was ready to go, ready to promote the fight, ready to let people know that he means business, okay? So that's why it kind of reminds me of that situation. Not to mention they both have very similar styles. Don't get me wrong. Of course, Kovalev is better, but they have similar styles, and they're both from the former Soviet Union. Now, another fight this is reminding me of is the Hopkins versus Kelly Pavlik fight. It reminds me a lot of that fight. There are a lot of similarities. One similarity is people thought that Bernard Hopkins damn near had no chance against Kelly Pavlik. They thought he was over the hill, he was old, he was going to get knocked out for the very first time, and then he would retire. They were saying back then he would be able to use an age excuse because he was still old even back then, right? They're saying the exact same thing today. A lot of people believe that Bernard Hopkins is in over his head. He's too old. He's fighting against a young, strong, hungry lion, okay? This guy is going to put Hopkins out of his misery, be the first guy to knock him out. These are the exact same things, that they were saying when it came to Kelly Pavlik fighting Bernard Hopkins. And of course, we know the double standards. Soon as Kelly Pavlik lost to Bernard Hopkins decisively, this is when all the excuses for Kelly Pavlik came along, right? Oh, Kelly, he wasn't ready. Oh, Kelly, he was having weight issues. You know what type of excuses they come up with for their favorite fighters. But anyway, this fight right here is a very interesting fight, to say the least. It's a very interesting fight because there is a possibility that Bernard Hopkins could walk into the ring and get knocked out and look like an old man. There's a possibility he can go in the ring, look like a young man, and still get knocked out against this aggressive young power puncher, Sergey Kovalev. There's also a possibility that Bernard Hopkins continues to defy the odds and he goes in here and outboxes this kid as easy as he outboxed Kelly Pavlik and Shumenov. I think, and it sounds kind of crazy, but we as fans may be looking too much at just the numbers. Looking too much at Bernard Hopkins' age, right? There's no way some 50-year-old rusty man like Bernard Hopkins is going to beat this big punching machine, the Terminator, so to speak, right? If you really think about it, it's almost like Bernard Hopkins is hustling us. He's hustling us because he knows that people are going to look at that stereotype, not give him a chance to win the fight, and he's going to come over and collect all the money after he wins, right? On some white man can't jump type shit. You guys remember the movie White Man Can't Jump, right? Typical story. They're stereotyping the white kid, thinking that he can't play ball at all. So he shows up. Everybody wants to bet money. They're going to beat him, stereotyping he don't know how to play. Next thing you know, the kid can play, right? That's what people are doing right now with Bernard Hopkins. They're stereotyping him with his age, okay? But for good reason, though. For good reason. You know, in this situation, this age, once again, it could show up. It could show up. I see this fight playing out two different ways. I see it playing out two different ways. Either Bernard Hopkins is going to go in the ring, look flashy, impressive, outclass, outbox this guy, Sergey, or he's going to do all of that and then get knocked out, right? Outbox him, outclass him, look real flashy, and then just get caught with something clean and be out for the count. I think that's the perception of the majority of boxing fans when it comes to this fight. Some people actually even think that Kovalev is a great boxer. And, you know, some people actually believe that Kovalev would not only knock out Hopkins, but outbox him and knock him out. But I think you're reaching with that one. You're reaching. He ain't outboxing Bernard Hopkins. I can guarantee you that one, okay? Now, the first thing people really need to look at when you're trying to figure out, logically, who has the best chance of winning this fight, you have to look at previous fights. You have to look at who's making the most mistakes, right? If you look at Kovalev's last three fights against Ismail Salik, Cedric Agnew, and Blake Caparello, you'll notice all three of these opponents, a couple things they have in common. One thing they have in common is none of these fighters was on the elite level, okay? Now, Ismail Salik, he used to be an undefeated prospect, but, you know, he had been knocked out and he had never been the same. So none of these fighters were on an elite level. This wasn't a pick'em type fight. This was a showcase for Kovalev to go to the next level, basically. All right? Now, another thing that all these opponents have in common is they were all able to catch Kovalev very, very easy. Very easy. But they all end up getting knocked out. And what happens in situations like this is, for the most part, the majority of fans tend to only remember the knockout. They don't look at the negative things because they don't want to remember the negative things. They really want to forget about anything negative that took place in that fight. But see, that's a mistake because that will seriously mislead you. I know you like the guy and you love the guy and you want him to succeed. But if you're purposely blinding yourself because you don't want to see the flaws, then you're setting yourself up for disappointment. You know, my son was sparring last week, and he was sparring with a kid that wasn't on his level, you know, didn't have anywhere near the same fights as him. So my son was basically just working with the kid, working on new things, and he was dominating the kid like he's supposed to. But in one of the rounds, one of the later rounds, my son got caught with two clean right hands, right? Now, even though my son, he pretty much dominated, like I said, every single round, including that round as well, I was disappointed. I was disappointed, and that's the only thing I talked about. I didn't talk about all the good stuff he did. I only talked about them two right hands he got caught with. Because the way I'm looking at it is, this kid is nowhere near on your level. If you let this kid hit you with two clean, basic 1-2s, imagine you in the Nationals fighting against a kid with 80 fights, right? This is how you are supposed to look at things. Don't get distracted by all the good things that you see. You should really be focusing on the flaws, okay? I remember a long time ago, Fernando Vargas, perfect example, when he was undefeated, fighting on everyone's undercard, and he was looked at as the next big thing. He was supposed to basically replace Oscar De La Hoya, right? And I just remember watching him fight on an undercard. He was fighting against some bum from the UK, matter of fact. And this dude had like about 6 or 8 losses, a gang of knockout losses. But I'm watching the fight, and I notice this kid is all of a sudden outboxing Fernando Vargas. He's catching Fernando Vargas with perfect jabs, hooks, combinations. He's playing with Fernando Vargas, you know, in the fight. And understand, this is real early in the stages of Fernando Vargas' career. Maybe he's like, I don't know, 16, I don't know, 13-0, whatever it was. But this was early on. And I'm looking at that, and eventually Fernando Vargas, he ended up getting the guy out and knocking him out, right? But when I seen that, I said to myself, this guy is going to lose when he steps up to the elite level. Because if you're getting hit that easy against a guy that is nowhere near on your level, how easy are you going to get hit against a guy who's going to be on your level and beyond? Right? When you see a small problem, you got to nip that shit in the bud soon as you see the problem. Don't wait for the problem to become a big ass problem. You got to fix that problem right away. And what I'm seeing with Kovalev is he hasn't fixed a lot of the problems that he's been having in the ring, because he could have fixed these problems a couple of years ago. All right, maybe when he had like only 8 or 10 fights, but he's still getting caught with the exact same punches over and over again. I mean, going back to the Cedric Agnew fight. Cedric Agnew, a guy who was nowhere near on Sergey's level. This guy, all he was basically doing was he was blocking Sergey's punches, and then he would come out of that block and he would catch Sergey with a perfect counter over and over and over again. All right? Ismail Salik, he got in the ring using great foot movement, speed. He was out slicking. He was beating Sergey Kovalev to the punch. He was pretty much doing whatever he wanted to until he got caught and got knocked out. Then we see Caparello. Caparello moving around the ring. He wheels Kovalev in to the corner and then catches him with a perfect right hand and knocks him down. Okay? Now, then he gets knocked out later on. Now, I know what you guys are going to say. I know what your Kovalev fans are going to say. You guys are going to say, but yeah, Dante, but he knocked them out, though. Who cares about what happened before? No, you should care about what happened before, because what happened before was against a guy that was nowhere near on Sergey Kovalev's level. So, yeah, you should care about what happened before the knockout. Okay? Don't be hypnotized just because you've seen a knockout, and that's what you wanted to see. See, the thing with knockouts is they could be very, very misleading, especially when you're knocking out tomato cans, when you're knocking out C-level, D-level type fighters. You're seeing these guys get knocked out back to back, and you're just saying, oh man, this dude is a Terminator. He gonna knock out everyone, right? But then usually in that scenario, as soon as that type of fighter steps up in competition, he ends up either getting knocked out or you don't see knockouts anymore. Because once again, when you step up in competition, the defense is far more better. The intelligence is far more higher than before, which is why we seldomly see knockouts in a super fight, in a 50-50 split type fight. I mean, we get the knockouts, but it doesn't happen as often as we would like to see them. And trust me, I know a lot of Kovalev fans right now, you're saying, so what, he gets hit, Dante? This is boxing, you get hit. But the most important thing is he knocks them all out, right? As long as you knock them out, that's all that really matters. Once again, you're setting yourself up for disappointment if you believe that, because you have to think to yourself, a fighter has to be good enough to be able to win even if he doesn't get that knockout. If your only chance of winning is really getting beat up for a long time and then knocking someone out, you're setting yourself up for failure. Like Diego Corrales did against Floyd Mayweather. Leading up to that fight, the power puncher who was the favorite to beat Floyd Mayweather, he was telling the media, he said, yeah, you know what, I'm going to lose the first 4 rounds. He's going to, outbox me or whatever, but I expect that because he's a good boxer. But then that's when I'm going to catch up, and then I'm going to start breaking him down, and I'm going to knock him out eventually. See, Diego Corrales, he already had the wrong mindset. He thought that he could sacrifice the first 4 or 5 rounds, and really it wasn't a sacrifice because he wasn't going to win the rounds anyway. But just the fact that he went in the ring with the assumption that, I could lose these rounds and then eventually I'll catch up with him. I mean, if you were known for racing people, right, and you were so fast that you give the majority of people a head start and you still beat them, that may work against some people, but it ain't going to work against everyone, because eventually you're going to mess around and give the wrong person a head start, and you're going to find out that dude was already faster than you without having an advantage. Okay? And that's what happened with Diego Corrales. And this could possibly happen with Sergey Kovalev. Although I know he's not as dumb as some of his fans that actually follow him, he's not going in there thinking like that. But this could actually play out regardless if he thinks that way or not. It could play out that way where he may need a knockout. And you better be training to win every single round. Okay? If you can't do that, then Kovalev may have some serious problems. So at the end of the day, I pretty much see this fight looking like a combination of the Shumenov fight and the Kelly Pavlik fight. I think Bernard Hopkins, his intelligence and his defense is on a whole nother level in contrast to Sergey Kovalev. Sergey Kovalev's only chance, as far as I'm concerned, to win this fight is to catch Bernard Hopkins and knock him out. And that is very possible that it will happen in this fight. But if I'm forced to bet, I'm going to have to lean towards Bernard Hopkins to outbox Sergey Kovalev. Another thing I wanted to say is it would seem that it would be more pressure on Sergey Kovalev to win this fight than Bernard Hopkins. Because after all, Bernard Hopkins, he is 50 years old, about to be 50 years old. Okay, so I'm just thinking it has to be some pressure on Kovalev, thinking I got to look good. I can't let a 50-year-old man beat me. That would be embarrassing. So I feel Sergey, he has more to lose in this fight than Bernard Hopkins does. You know, Bernard Hopkins, he's already done magnificent things in his late 40s. Sergey Kovalev is a young fighter. He's trying to get to where Bernard Hopkins is already at. So he definitely has a lot more to lose in this situation. And if Bernard Hopkins wins this fight, my goodness, this man is an alien. Unbelievable. If he could beat someone like Sergey Kovalev, someone that Adonis Stevenson wanted no part of, right? The old man Bernard Hopkins is running right to Sergey Kovalev. He ain't scared to jump right into the trap because he thinks he's going to trap the trap. You feel me? So we'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens. I mean, like I said, if Hopkins wins, this is huge for his legacy. If Kovalev wins this fight, he'll be catapulted into that big star status. He'll be able to call more shots. He'll be, of course, more recognized and more respected. And quite frankly, probably even top 10 pound for pound, one of the best fighters in the world, if he could beat someone like Bernard Hopkins and do it in an impressive fashion. And before I end this video, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on. I truly believe that Bernard Hopkins is a much more tougher fight for Sergey than Adonis Stevenson would have been. And the reason is simple, because unlike Bernard Hopkins, Adonis, he is a one-handed fighter. He's a one-handed fighter. He relies on the left hand way too much. That's the reason why he almost ended up losing to Fonfara in his last fight, because he was dominating Fonfara throughout the whole fight, but the problem was he was dominating him with nothing but the left hand. If Adonis would have put more punches together, he would have stopped that guy. If he would have been throwing right hooks, uppercuts, right hook to the body, left hook to the body, check hooks, and so on and so forth early in the fight, that would have been an easy fight for him. But because he was fighting with one hand, he made the fight very difficult for himself. And he would have had a difficult time fighting Kovalev 12 rounds with just one hand. Bernard Hopkins doesn't have that same problem that Adonis has. Bernard, he fights with both hands. Bernard uses every single weapon that could be used. So that's pretty much all I got on this one, guys. I'm on to the next one.